Professor N.R. Madhava Menon, Shri Sunil Mathur, Shri Parthasarathi, Shri Vijay Srirangan, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and honor to be in front of you on the 183rd Foundation Day celebrations. First, let me offer my deepest condolences on the demise of the member of Bombay Chamber of Commerce, Shri Trilochan Singh Sahni. The Foundation Day celebrations are very important for an institution. I congratulate all the members and other associates as well as employees of Bombay Chamber of Commerce for being so relevant for such a long period of time. And also my best wishes that it remains relevant for additional 183 more years and beyond. At BSE, we celebrated our 143rd Foundation Day on July 9, 2018. Bombay Chamber of Commerce is 40 years old and a senior institution to BSE. Recently, as mentioned, I wrote a profitable book on BSE's history. Some portion of the research, sir, was also done at your library because you are older and there are some documents relating to that. The trading in stock markets was done before BSE was set up in Mumbai and for several decades before that. And many of these things have been documented in Bombay Chamber of Commerce history. Today, I will discuss about capitalism without capital. It's an interesting idea. Not many people have talked about it. I have also not talked about it in a comprehensive way. And so this is my first time exploring this idea of capitalism without capital. I hope you will like it. Large part of the talk is about the history of economics. In the way I understand it, I create stories, many of them may not be true. A small portion, but more important, is about the future the way I expect it. It may not come out to be true either. If some of you feel that I've hurt your religious or other feelings in some way by my talk, I beg your pardon beforehand, as a purpose is to create a cogent story and not to diminish anything or anyone's prestige in any way. Broadly, I'll try to cover 5 ideas into one. One is the concept of elites in a society. Other is concept of capital. A third, minor part, is about religion and how it connects into elites and capital. Probably, I don't have much time, but I'll try to cover a little bit of religion part of it. The last 2 parts are more closer to my heart. One is the technology, and 5th is the waves of technology. How all of this converge to create a society. Overall, the means of production and surplus have been used by elites, using technology to control masses even further. In olden societies, there were many ways to control the poor masses for the benefits of the elites. And history of mankind is basically about cruelty and exploitation throughout its history. India had its own very, very stable methodology called caste system, where everyone is interlocked into exploiting the down below, and the last man exploits the women. And that's where we had a very stable system, and if things had gone into what they call intermediation, those issues would never have been solved. So the judicial and constitutional part has been very important. And similarly, many of these issues of faith could have been brought into even those kind of things without actually resolving the problem. Europe had its own ways of handling that. They used to have feudal lords, and then they used to have the serfs. The serfs used to serve basically and live at the behest of the lord. The land had to be tilled by them. I'm not talking much about India because some of us may feel really bad about our own history once we start going into that. So it's good to talk about the Europe, which is easier to talk in such environment. And so Europe had serfdom and the feudal lords. The lords used to provide the land for tilling, and large portion of whatever was produced was taken out which became later on taxation. To keep people down for very long is an issue, and that's why a code of conduct, a way of dealing with each other was created. Even amongst poor, there are disputes, they need to be intermediated, they need to be judged upon, and that's where a code of conduct, one of the first instances in Western world was what we call Code of Hammurabi. If you have studied it in probably high school. But over and above that, a new method was created of religion, how to deal with each other, how to deal with people of your own type, the lower type, how to deal with people above you, how to deal with people below you. How to deal with people of your own type is what we call dispute resolution and judgments. People above you, you can't deal with. That is called tradition and respect. Whatever the elites do is in India called Leela, but you and me cannot do that. How to deal with people below you is your right and their obligation. And that is where the overall framework of religion was created to ensure that the serfs remain serfs, continue to serve the feudal lords. And as additional measure to also frighten you after your death, a new framework was created called God. So if you don't behave, the God will punish you. You have to stay in your station. If you try to move away from station, then God will punish you. And that is where the life became a little more stable there. But there are many religions which do not have God. Many times we think God is an essential part of a religion. It is not. Many religions do not have God. Even Indic religions, some of them do not have gods. Like Buddhism originally did not have God. Confucianism again does not have God, and few other places. But effectively, how to behave with each other, people of your type, people above, people below, and overall is what the religion, it's a code of conduct of sorts. And then we can differentiate very, very finitely, very minutely, like we do as Hindus. We go down that if you are of this age and that gender and this and that, then you can do this, you can't do that, and so on and so forth. And that is more our way of spending time, because we had everything coming literally without much work, because rains used to come on their own, things used to grow on their own, we used to eat and then think and differentiate amongst each other, and that's where we remain where we were. Democracy in its original form, wherever it was practiced in Rome, Greece or India, because India is also considered a mother of democracy. In Gautam Buddha's time, there were many, many places where democracy was practiced, even before Rome and so on and so forth. But those democracies were democracies of elites. They were not universal franchise democracies. Everyone did not have votes. Only the lords had votes in Rome or Greece, or probably Rome and India. Greece did not have that kind of framework. But problem was with democracy was they didn't want to expand. The surplus that was created was spread amongst the elites, the people who would vote. The others were either slaves or employees of the lords. The surplus resources, if you had to expand, go and attack other societies, and if you got the surpluses, you also got the elites of the society. And you did not want to spend those resources or share your resources with those elites, and that's why the democracies were inherently not aggressive. On the other side, the king framework, king-based system, wanted to expand because all the surpluses used to accrue to one single person or his family or her family. And that is where all the additional surpluses, even one more grain of rice, if you could accrue, you would go and attack the other society. And that's where the king system, which were basically inherently attacking type, and the democracies, which were inherently defensive type, the king systems actually won. And that is where the system actually stabilized over a period. Old system in Europe, in a way, was agrarian, feudal, as I said. It had its own problems. The French Revolution changed things marginally. The elites, earlier elites, some of them were killed, some of them became the leaders of the new revolution, and some of the proletariat became the new bourgeois, and that's where, again, the same framework with newer people started in France as well as the rest of the Europe. India got its own new framework in the form of zamindars, which were set up by British Raj to oppose the earlier kings, the Rajas or the Nawabs. And these zamindars were basically people who were not aggressive to the ruler who had actually appointed them. And their main job was to actually manage the law and order and keep on collecting as much tax as possible. Law and order is a very interesting part in society, that if that is there, you don't care as a ruler. If you can maintain law and order, then everything is all right. Inter se, if two groups have a problem, be it. And that's what the British system actually worked on. Social structures with all the issues, all the problems within India continued. And Europe had its own moment of renaissance from within. Its industrial revolution came, and capitalism as a part of the industrialization came. The exploitation, which was basically distributed across villages, across each field of the feudal lords, became centralized in one place, in mills of Manchester, mills of London, and so on and so forth. And that is where exploitation became very visible in slums of Ireland, of UK, of every other places. And from rural distributed exploitation, it became very sort of in-your-face, city-based exploitation. There were two people, one guy called Karl Marx, another his friend called Engel, looked at it and were moved rightfully. They did not actually experience the agrarian exploitation, and they thought that capitalism is the reason why people are able to exploit other people, and very badly at that. And they created this concept of communism or socialism, which became very popular. And two sides became very apparent. The bourgeois, the people with money, people who work, people who eat on other people's work, and the proletariat who actually work came up. And socialism became very successful. There was a revolution in Russia, and that became hugely successful, probably not exactly successful, but they were very successful in marketing themselves to UK. And that time, after the revolution in Russia, there used to be many agents of Russia, either sleeping or otherwise, in UK, and telling about great successes that Russia had achieved after becoming a socialist country. And many of our leaders of independence, including Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Dadabhai Naoroji, you can name them, and almost all of them, including Ambedkar, they studied in UK. Other than Ambedkar, who went on scholarship from a king called Gayakwad of Baroda, everyone else was actually a child of rich people. Mahatma Gandhi's father was a prime minister in a state of Porbandar. People could not have gone to study in UK if their parents were not rich. And that is a fact. But those rich people were feeling disenfranchised. They did not have the right to exploit the same way as they were exploiting before the Britishers came. And so they were feeling bad that we are not having our independence to make our rules to exploit our people. How is it that the outsiders are exploiting our people? And that is where the Indian freedom movement became important when more and more people went there. But they also learned that Russia had a model which was absolutely imperative for India to follow, and that was socialism. So when India became independent, it was a very non-violent movement, which was a good thing. But since all our leaders studied only in UK, and only Ambedkar went to US. Ambedkar also studied US in Columbia, but he was like a minority of one. The rest was basically very much in love with socialism. And when I look back as a society, Ambedkar should have been the first to ask for socialism. He was asking for capitalism because he had experienced capitalism also. And the others, who were actually rich people, were asking for socialism. We became Socialist Republic of India. And as we do always, we did it half-hearted. We became Socialist Republic of India in our constitution, but we did nothing else. Everything remained as is. No land reforms, nothing happened. People who had money still had money. People who had higher status still had higher status. And that is what our, what I call hybrid socialism was, that we would give the lip service, but do continue to have our old sort of feudal system of India's own. And so that continued till 1991. In 91, we as a society had a serious issue of balance of payment crisis. And we opened up the license stuff and stuff like that. But we also had something called red tape. We opened up we became delicensed, but we continued the red tape. We continue to have that even now. In the process, a new framework came in called information technology. In 1750, when Britishers became largely the rulers of India, India used to have around 25% of world population. If you took Bangladesh, Pakistan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka and other places, we had around 25% of world population and 25% of world GDP. When Britishers went in 1950, broadly 200 years later, we had 2% of world GDP and around 17% of world population, 16 or 17% world population. We had lost 23 percentage points. Why? Because we missed out on a revolution called Industrial Revolution. We did not participate because we did not develop on the science and mathematics our forefathers had developed 2000 years back. But we did not develop, we did not use, we did not allow our other people to use, we kept on worshipping them. Now, in early 90s, a new framework came called information technology. Before that, we were a very inward-looking country. We did not want to deal with outsiders, and that also was a lesson our leaders had learned, that the Britishers came here to trade, and they made us slaves, so we should not trade. And that's where we became inward-looking. We were forced to go out because we had a balance of payment crisis. We did not do it voluntarily. We as a society, we don't do anything voluntarily. And that's where the technology, information technology came as a new wave. The new framework was coming in and Indians started going abroad. New need for engineers came up, lower cost engineers. And India, when I was studying till 1989, India used to produce around 500 engineers in computer science every year. In 1993-94, a huge wave of need for computers came in Western countries. And that's where every Indian started printing, and I'm joking, but every Indian started printing engineering certificates of universities at their home, because the new technology of Xerox machine came in. And all of our people started going there, and they actually learned, many of them learned on the job, and they became computer experts. But what it did is that it changed the world's perspective about India. When I used to go abroad till 91, in US, the news, or once in 15 days, you would get some news about India. Either there will be photograph of cows running on the road, or juggler juggling something on the road, and so on and so forth. Today, when you go to US, which is many of us do often, you see the stories about Indians taking away jobs from Americans. That is basically what has happened over the last 25 years. One single technology called information technology changed the world completely, thoroughly, transformationally, fundamentally. None of you over the last 15 years can now think, at least most of you would not have used mobile phones 20 years back. Today, you can't live without it. Even when I'm talking, many of you are actually checking out what's happening to the rest of the world. That's important. That technology has changed life fundamentally, thoroughly, transformationally. And that technology has changed India completely. India's perspective about the world has changed. India's perspective about itself has changed. And the world's perspective about India has changed. So that is basically the story of the past. But one of the things which I learned is that the technologies come in waves. They come in waves. Waves used to come slower and slower. One of the first technologies that was invented, you don't have to learn, you don't have to understand technology fully. Technology is not science. Technology is applied science. And you may not understand it fully, and still you may use it. Still you may control it. And one of the first technologies the mankind invented was perhaps fire. Fire was a technology for a society that would give better food. It will ensure people don't fall ill that fast. And also, it could be used as a weapon to throw on your enemies and actually frighten them. Frighten away the animals and so on and so forth. Later on, wheel would have come. Many other technologies would have come. And over the last, say, 500-600 years, if you have seen, say, steam engine, which was considered a starting of the Industrial Revolution, and then electricity. The steam engine took probably 400 years to get across the world. Electricity took around 150 years, 200 years. We are still trying to electrify many villages in India. Then came television, which took probably 70 years. A mobile phone, 30 years. A Facebook, 15 years. And every time this wave comes, it comes faster and faster and faster. If that is true, each wave gets you a GDP which is unbelievably large. Larger than all the past waves combined. If we were in 1750, 25% of world GDP, and we became 2% of world GDP, in 200 years, on a slow wave activity, what will happen to the next waves that are coming? The next 40 years, I have an hypothesis that around 20 such technologies are coming. At least I can think of 20 such technologies today. It could be many more. You might have heard of robotics. Many people think robots will take away jobs. That used to be true when mills were set up. Many people thought mills will take away jobs and nobody will be having any way to do things manually. But newer jobs came in. 3D printing is going to change life completely, thoroughly, fundamentally. You might be able to manufacture a car at home. You might be able to manufacture even a gun at home or a table at home. So why would you buy things from Flipkart? Of course, e-commerce is another technology. Holograms are going to make life easier for you to talk to each other in 3D. And drones, you can think of it 5 years back. Drones in India was a novelty. Today, a 10-year-old kid is able to make drone and do things with them. Space technology is going to again change life very fundamentally. Many of the new heroes, including Elon Musk and Bezos, are now into the space technology, including Branson. Artificial intelligence will be one of the most fundamental technologies changes, like information technology, big data, exoskeletons, where you and me can lift weights of 10,000 kilos and run at 100 kilometers per hour speed. Those kind of stuff is going to come. Virtual reality. For me, in next 20 years, many of us will spend more time in virtual reality than real reality. Wearable computers. Many of us are wearing computers. I am wearing one too. Apple Watch and whatever you might be wearing. But there will be also inside body computers. There are computers which will be moving around in your body, and they'll of course measure pressure, temperature, and the need for insulin and so on and so forth, and also when required, put in a little bit there. I wear one computer here, which is actually connected to my body inside, and it measures my sugar. I'm a diabetic. It measures my sugar every second and gives information to a sensor in my pocket. And of course, my wife gets to know immediately whether I'm eating sweets or not. She's a doctor. It is said that people will start living 150 years within next 30, 40 years. Good thing is that 150 years, if you live, it's a good thing for you. But imagine this, the young people. If you don't give up your house, what will happen to your children? They are hoping that you go away. Your wealth, they want to use. You are not going to vacate fast. You're going to have genetically modified agriculture. Already, Gujarat model of agriculture in cotton has given almost 10% year on year for last almost 15 years. Is purely on BT cotton. Genetically modified animals will come in of different shape, size, different ways of doing things. And of course, genetically modified humans will come. And this is all there in the realm of actually happening. I am not thinking about things which may not happen. As I said, India missed out on the Industrial Revolution, but it is there at the cusp with the rest of the world for the newer revolution, the infotech revolution, or what they call Industrial Revolution 4.0. I have two hypotheses. One is that more wealth will be created in next 40 years because waves are coming faster. Earlier wave was 300 years, then this wave is going to be 40 years. More wealth will be created in next 40 years than that has been created in last 10,000 years. If world GDP is today around $360 trillion, we'll be creating $360 trillion of more GDP over next 40 years. And that is a very large number. India's GDP today is around $2.5 trillion. India is 17% of world population, but around 22% of world's young people, because we are a young society. Who can learn newer things? Young people can learn newer things, who are forward-looking, not backward-looking. There are young societies, not as large as ours, but those societies look back. Our society is poor, but is looking forward. And that is where I get a huge hope that next 40 years, India will suddenly participate in this new wave and create more wealth that has been created, more wealth than that has been created over the last 10,000 years in India. If India is able to create that 25% magic number out of that $360 trillion of GDP, $360 trillion of wealth, then it's be almost $90 trillion of wealth that India will create. You say, no, it's not going to be 25%, probably it will be 15%. And still, it's going to be almost $60, $70 trillion. Today, our wealth is around $10 trillion. We are going to create 6 to 9 times more wealth over the next 40 years as a society. And that is a great opportunity. The second hypothesis I have is that 70% jobs will be such that we have not even thought about them today. We cannot think about them today. Many people tell me that you make this up. We don't believe you. But when I was studying, nobody told me that when you go to New Jersey, go to drive-in McDonald's, give your order on the window, drive on the other side, collect your goods. The entire interaction you are doing is with the person sitting in Bangalore at Wipro. Nobody told me that. Nobody told me that today a mathematics teacher sitting in Sagar district of MP is actually teaching somebody in Russia mathematics at $50 per hour. That is happening as I and you talk. Many, many newer jobs, newer types of jobs will come back, which we cannot think about them today. And that is where very few societies, very few generations have seen so much change before. This generation that is sitting here has seen one single technology, one single life cycle of information technology in their lifetime. No other generation was lucky enough to see one full life cycle. And that's why we thought that life never changes. When I was young, I was told that change is the only constant, and I couldn't even figure out. One of the reasons that I studied not in English, I studied in vernacular medium. But when I started learning about it, learning English, I realized that both are actually contrasts, change and constant. Now, when I look back at my life, I think that was true in part. What I say now to youngsters is that change is not constant. Change is accelerating. And you, the youngsters sitting here or at home, they will have to not only unlearn what they have learned when they grow up, but continue to learn newer and newer things every 5 years. That brings me to today's headline which I gave, is that capitalism without capital. Earlier, life used to be linear. We all studied that mathematics problem, arithmetic problem, that 300 people can make a house in 1 month. How many people can make a house in 15 days? And you'll say, no, it's 600 people, right? That is the linearity part of it. Earlier, if you had to make $1 billion, you had to put in $1 billion. And capital-starved country like India, most people did not have capital. In fact, rich people also did not have capital. Poor people did not even have anything. The next 40 years, and we have seen the glimpse of it, that today, to make $1 billion, you don't need to invest even 50,000 rupees, $1,000. You need to have little money and a lot of brains, and then you can make $1 billion. It has happened to Mark Zuckerberg, it has happened to Larry Page, it has happened to Nandan Nilekani, it has happened to Narayan Murthy. They are not from traditional business families. They are not people with capital. They are people with a lot of brains and, of course, luck to be there in the right place, right time. But they made their money. And that is why they did not require capital. In next 40 years, a lot of such people will make a lot of such money without actually investing capital. But they will make still humongous amount of wealth. And that is the idea for me of capitalism without capital. And that is what I think is going to happen. A tremendous amount of disruption will take place. What we consider the new tech now will become old overnight. And Nokia, you might remember, 5 years back or 6 years back, it was the largest mobile manufacturer. Next year, nothing, right? What we consider a startup might become very, very large. And again, in few years' time, if it doesn't figure out the newer ways of doing things, it may also go down. How India can take advantage, how each of you and me can take advantage is what needs to be seen. The new non-linear revolution is coming, and we need to figure out, some of you are also, I can see the consuls of different countries, how each country can figure out their strategy. But India is what I call a bottom-up country, not a top-down, where now no longer the elites decide which technology to use. Each and every Indian is trying to figure out. In fact, when many people ask me that, what do you do in India? How do you work as a society? And we say, in China, if the premier says, everyone has to do it. In India, if prime minister say, none of us do it. Thank you very much.